Welcome to the Hardtech Podcast.
And everybody, welcome back to the Hardtech Podcast. I'm your host, DeAndre Harakas, with my usual suspect. He's back, Grant Chapman.
Back in the room. Thanks for having me back.
Everybody, we're again back on season 3. If you haven't checked out season 2 already, we did 42 different episodes of founders and product leaders all across the country. And today, I'm super excited. If you guys have ever been hot or cold sleeping in your bed, 8 Sleep is solving that problem at scale and at a rate that, quite frankly, we really haven't seen the consumer technology space as of late. Everybody, this is Sam Kang, the Chief Product Officer at 8 Sleep. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. It's great to be here.
Yeah, Sam. So I think a lot of people have at least seen an ad on YouTube, Instagram. I know that I have for 8 Sleep, but would love to kind of dive into just a brief update on your background, who you are, kind of what brings you into the world of hardware.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Sam Kang. I'm the Chief Product Officer at 8 Sleep. Pretty much my background has always been in developing hardware products, especially early Gen 1 type products, often for startups. I started my career in Silicon Valley working at an engineering consulting company where we got to work with lots of early stage companies. So I worked on the first Tesla Roadster back in 2005. I worked on the first Jawbone Bluetooth headsets, for those of you that remember that, and a bunch of products along the way. And yeah, I just love building products and building things that people find useful and valuable.
Absolutely, Grant. I know that's near and dear to your heart.
It's what I do every day. Still, it's really fun when you realize that all the big major things were almost always done with the firm, right? Like the companies and the brand names that everyone knows and loves. Yeah, they are the ones working on V15 and V16 and versions along down the line of this main core product line. But almost all those core true product innovations start at a firm outside of the four walls of an enterprise. And that's what we've seen, at least, is that it's always that they go outside to innovate and then inside to keep iterating. And I didn't know that until I got in the industry.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's for sure when you're a startup and it's often just like a founder or two. I mean, these teams were super small. I think when we were working with Tesla, they were 40 people at the time. Jawbone was like a 5-person company at the time. So yeah, you need help anywhere you can get it. So yeah, we had the good fortune of working with a lot of those companies.
Sam, the first question I've got for you is the opening question is from consultancy to the bedroom, right? I thought that was kind of funny, but more specifically around, there's so many things you learn as an engineer when you're working at a development firm, like the one you worked at, or like Glassboard, for example. All these different projects, all these different problems to solve. You're kind of drinking from the fire hose, especially early on in your career. I'm curious, how have those learnings really carried their way into 8 Sleep? What sort of lessons did you learn that you're able to actually apply to the engineering you guys are doing over there now?
Yeah, I think consulting is great because you just see so many different kinds of problems. Like, I think if you're going to master anything, it all comes down to reps, right? Like when you talk about, you hear athletes talk about it, musicians, artists, like it all comes down to reps. And I think consulting just gives you so many of those reps. And I think the fact that you have to solve so many different kinds of problems, like the products I worked on, automotive, consumer, medical devices, you're just having to constantly learn something quickly and try to solve it. And so I think that gives you, such an advantage early on in terms of compounding all that experience. I think also the fact that you're always working with different teams too. So it's like you're working with client teams, you're working with different manufacturers. You're working in environments where the systems are not set up yet, especially that was my experience early on working with these early startups. It's not like there were already playbooks or PDPs set up. It's like we were going in and having to help create that. And so you just saw so many different scenarios. And so you could start pattern matching like, okay, in these scenarios, this works. In these other scenarios, this doesn't work.
Yep, and I think it's, you're touching on like the 10,000 hours moment, right? What is your 10,000 hours that makes you an expert in a thing? And when you do it at one company, you are the expert in that thing. I mean, underwater basket weaving. If you do that in your career, you are 10,000 hours in underwater basket weaving, and you're better than everyone. But when you do it in a consultancy, your 10,000 hours are actually just in problem solving, right? It's in, how do I get in front of this risky thing? I know what we're working on is uncertain. What tests and where do I need to take them to go get certainty down the road? That's the muscle you build, not knowing exactly how to tune that one RF circuit. Right, and I think that's the magic of the consultancy is the 10,000 hours are all in problem solving, not in any one vertical. But along the way, you learn nuggets of depth in certain verticals, right? I'm sure, Sam, you've got some funny stories of something you never thought you'd know enough about, and now you're the expert in some weird technology. And later, 3 years later, you'll have a client like you can borrow something from that one obscure product, and borrow it and use that technology or that core concept today, which is so cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's right. And I think it was particularly well suited for early stage startups too, because in startups, like that kind of ambiguity, ability to navigate ambiguity and solve different kinds of problems is important, because you never know what pivot you're going to have to take. And you're not exactly, you have a hypothesis initially, but you don't really know the form the product's going to take or what problems you're going to really have to tackle for consumers. So I think that's good. But I mean, that said, like, I have tremendous respect for people who've, developed deep expertise in places, right? I think most technologies and most products, you get it started by having generalists that can solve lots of different problems. But if you're going to really move the needle and really get to scale, then you really do need to leverage expertise too. So I think, it's definitely both.
Yeah. And I think it's the world couldn't exist without both. Like, if you only had generalists, we would never invent new science and physics. If we only had people that were really, narrowly focused, products would never ship. They'd never get out the door because they'd always be researched and iterated on. And it takes that yin and yang balance of balancing the force, the light and the dark side of the force, to push products out the door that are innovative. Which is always fun.
No, I honestly completely agree on my side, right? I mean, my background was a startup founder, so started a company when I was in college, ran it for a number of years. And it was in the sports technology space, and I played football. But my passion, I guess, really wasn't in sport, really. It was I fell in love with solving this core problem that the coaches were experiencing, then kicked me off of my founder journey, which then made me fall in love with go-to-market and fundraising and scaling a company. And so that same exact experience happened for me early on, which was, and it sounds like you guys had a similar experience in the consultancy, which is I'm constantly just solving problems. It's actually what I became really good at versus any one thing. But yeah, whenever you're going to scale and to grow, and I'll ask some questions later on, is how you're thinking about that from the engineering team perspective on, do we go for generalists? Do we go for folks that are hyper specialized? I think it's a great point, right? I'm not probably the CEO you want to put into a late stage growth company. Actually, I can tell you right now I'm not, but boy, if you want to go from 0 to 1 and get your first customers, then sign me up, right? I'm good for that part. And maybe that'll change over time, but.
No, that's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the case.
And then Sam, how old is 8 Sleep as a company? I'm trying to gauge, what is the level of, how many years has the team been together? What version of product are you guys on? Because there's that transition from generalist to mature with some specialists in the background that starts happening. Where are you guys at in that journey?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think, honestly, I should know the exact year, but I think it was actually 2014 or 2015 when the company was officially founded. It was Max and Matteo started the company, and then they did Y Combinator. And so, the company's been at this for a while, right? It's like most companies that achieve a lot of success, it takes time. You're grinding in those early years, trying to find product market fit, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, but it's the 10-year overnight success, of course, right?
No, exactly, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and so how big is the team right now that you guys are what's the product development or engineering team size?
Yeah, that's good. I think in terms of the overall company, we're still actually quite small in the grand scheme of things. About 150, I think, is probably somewhere around there. We are continuing to grow, so it might be a little more than that. And then the hardware development team, the core of the team, is about a little over 30 people. And that's split between the U.S. and Asia.
No, that's awesome. And again, I think that's a really fun number, because you can probably afford to have a handful of really good specialists and then a bunch of generalists that are supporting those people through the rest of the development process between concepting, design, build, test, and then production. Because again, you mentioned you had some team members in Asia. It sounds like that's probably where you're manufacturing. And for those that haven't done that yet, that is so key to have someone on the ground to help push that along, get those timelines tighter, catch things in real time versus the every 12-hour email, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, consumer electronics, it's so hard to beat Asia in terms of the supply chain and the access to manufacturing that you have over there. So, and if you're building any product that has to be highly optimized and you're trying to really push bounds of performance, reliability, cost, you have to so tightly integrate to your suppliers and your partners over there. And so, yeah, it's a critical part of our success is having great team members over there.
Sam, one of the questions I have is just thinking about other kind of elite engineers like yourself and making that decision to join a startup, right? And kind of go all in and, invest your time, your effort, blood, sweat, and tears into growing that company and the products, right? I'm curious, kind of what made you make that decision to join 8 Sleep, and what was so compelling about the company that made you make the leap?
So I don't know if it's because this was my experience early on in my career or it just happened to be a good fit for my personality. It's probably a combination of both, but I've always loved working with startups. When you're in consulting, you get to work with lots of different kinds of clients, like you work with startups, big companies. And the big companies were nice because they had a lot of infrastructure and they understood their products and their customers. But the startups were the ones that I always felt was the most fun because they were the ones that had the most conviction around a problem that they wanted to solve. They're the ones who were willing to take risks on new ideas that maybe seem kind of crazy, but it's what you have to do to succeed as a startup, right? Like you're just not going to succeed as a startup doing what everybody else is doing. And so I've just found that environment to be super fun. Like go into a group of people, you're really closely knit, you're trying to solve a really hard problem, and ideas can come from anywhere, right? It could come from myself when I was a 20-something-year-old trying to work on an electric car, or even on our team. Like really good ideas can come from anywhere, and I just love that aspect of it. I just love being part of a small team that's trying to solve a hard problem. And just one of my favorite experiences is sitting in a conference room, like or in the factory trying to brainstorm a problem, and it's something you're like you can't figure out, but through the course of riffing on ideas and post-it notes and all that kind of stuff, you come to a solution. And the best ideas are the ones where someone's like, well, that seems crazy, but it might actually work, and then you go try it and then it actually does work. Like to me, that's just the most fun part of developing products and engineering. And so to me, I've always gravitated towards startups. I think the thing about Eat Sleep, when I found out about it and started talking to our team here, was the mission and the impact. I've always been interested in health. Even in school, I did biomedical device design as like one of my specializations. And to me, if you want to have impact and improve people's lives, like it's pretty direct, right? It's like, okay, somebody's having some health issues and you can try to improve it, but just day to day, so much of our life is colored by our ability to be healthy and show up for our families and to do what the things, pursue what you want to pursue. And so when I stumbled upon Eat Sleep, the fact that we had this mission of really trying to improve people's lives, and I think the insight that we had is, and that the founding team of Mateo have, is really the key to sleep. It's about that. There is a line that we had for a long time, which is fulfilling human potential, right? It's like fueling human potential. So really, the goal of sleep is to be able to have people show up and do extraordinary things in their lives. And to me, that mission absolutely resonated. And when you really peel back the layers, sleep is one of the most underrated aspects of sleep. Of health. And I think that's changing now, right? Like people are starting to realize that sleep is really important. And if you really think of the pillars of health, it's diet, exercise, and sleep. But if you think of just how much time, money, energy is spent on diet and exercise, and how little is spent in terms of managing and optimizing sleep, like it just clicked for me, like, oh, there's a huge opportunity here. This is something that I could probably spend the next 20, 30 years of my life trying to help improve. And so, that's why I was excited to join.
No, that's awesome. And it's one of those things, like, you don't realize how many hours of your life you sleep and how important that actually is to get right. Everyone that is an athlete and works out is maybe 2 hours a day, right? 3 if they're absolutely killing it. That is still less than half of what you should be sleeping a day. And we optimize every ounce of what we work out or every time we eat. And Sam, I think that delivery was really good of like, sleep is this underrated thing that affects us holistically and no one pays attention to it other than, maybe I am sleeping less than I should and I should sleep more. That is, the extent of what most people think about when they're trying to improve their sleep. That's super cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So on your side, Sam, so it sounds like in terms of like kind of making that decision to join Eat Sleep, it was about, hey, I actually do really enjoy solving problems at startups. I think that it's innovative, it's fun, unique ways to solve problems. We're in, rooms and we get to just throw stuff at a whiteboard. Maybe this crazy idea works and it works out. But also it sounds like a huge part of it was just the vision and the overall mission of the company and actually believing in what the founders were talking about. I think obviously they've been incredible at raising capital and so on, but that story arc of kind of zooming out a bit beyond just, hey, this product warms and cools your bed, more on like, this is going to make you more productive and show up more presently in your day-to-day life. That's a much broader mission. And so would you say like those things combined is really ultimately what made you make that decision? Like, hey, this is where I want to go for the next, like you mentioned, 20, 30 years of my life.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's right on. I mean, I'm someone that I really do enjoy problem solving, and to me, one of the toughest things about in consulting, but I mean, honestly, in any job, is like you're working super hard on something, and then the product doesn't go anywhere, right? Either because like the concept was wrong, or
You're running money.
There's just bigger forces. The client ran out of money, or just like political stuff at the company, to where it's like maybe this doesn't not a strategic priority. Like the number of projects I worked on where we had executive sponsors, but then the CEO or somebody leaves, and then now the product basically like dies on the vine. Like those experiences were super frustrating for me. And so coming to a place where I'm like, oh, there are really ambitious goals and products that we want to build, and like the ability to actually, if I work on it, I can bring these things into the world, and that people can actually benefit from it. Like to me, that's awesome. I'll say actually the one other thing too is I really like the other thing that really jumped out at me as I started really digging into our products was how hardware is such a critical portion of the solution. Like ultimately, all of our products are about interacting either with the person or the environment, and so they're highly hardware, but also highly mechanical. And that's my background. It's I've always worked on my undergrad was in mechanical engineering, but always working on electromechanical systems. And even in the hardware world, there's lots of products that don't have like super meaty mechanical problems. And for me, the problems here were super interesting. It's like, oh, we're doing with things around thermals, around biometric sensing, around mechanisms.
And audio and there's fluid control.
Audio, so many things. Yeah, exactly. Like aeroacoustics. Like there's just so many different elements of mechanical engineering. My friends always joke, like I'm the only person they know in our friend group that actually uses what I learned in school, like every single day. And it's like, but to me, that's so fun. And that's another thing that just really jumped out at me. And usually in order to solve those kinds of complex electromechanical problems, you usually have to work on products that are much more complex, like think cars, right? And a lot of our team come from places like Tesla, because it's like that's usually the kind of places you have to go to have that breadth of problems. But I love what we're doing at 8 because it's like it actually can be worked on a team that's like a handful of people driving these, right? And so that's pretty rare. Like you actually don't usually find that in many places.
Right. Well, it's one of those things that coming from someone who was in the consultancy world, like I am and you came from, we would get really bored working on one very narrow problem, right? We kind of need that variety to stay happy and healthy and engaged. And again, I've had the pleasure of meeting you and some of the rest of your team out in San Francisco, and we were out there a couple weeks ago, and it's like, man, they are solving 24 different physics domains problems to make this one product launch between embedded software and electronics, and then thermals and fluid control, and how do you manufacture fluid pathways that are flexible but don't leak and do all this stuff. And it's these challenges stack up, and it's the same. We were swapping the same stories at on the show floor of what I'm doing for all of the various amounts of clients that we have, but you're doing it all in one house, so you get like the double benefit of all the exposure to the variety that our ADD craves, but in one product line that you can drive shipping, right? Your team can be 100% aligned behind. So I think that's Sam, you got a pretty magical place that you've been able to find that blends those two worlds together.
No, absolutely. And actually, the other thing that is also super cool about what we're doing, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but some of the projects in consulting that I know myself and our teams really loved were the things that directly touch the end user.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
It becomes a little bit more abstract when it's like a business process thing where you're like building this back end thing that's going to eventually, like improve operational efficiency. It's like we're using products that people use every single day, right? And it's very high touch. And so trying to understand users, all the industrial design, but then like when the product ships, you see people using it, like ourselves and our friends are using it. And so there's such an intense like personal human connection there on our products as well that I think is just like finding the combination of all of those things. It's like incredibly rare. So to find it in one place, I was like, oh, yeah, this is the place I want to be.
Absolutely, man. And, the other thing I would add is also everyone kind of wants to work at a consumer company because you get like popular, like to say the quiet part.
If you have success, but consumer is hard. That's true. But it's just it's hard to break through.
Exactly, it's very hard to break through. But once you do, like, oh, you work at 8 Sleep, or you work at Airbnb, right? Like those consumer products, you get kind of popular, and that's a benefit as well. Versus being like the biggest of this one category in B2B, what have you, and people are like, I've never heard of it. It's like, oh, we're 9-figure business. Like, oh, that's cool.
You help logistics company do logistics more logistically, and you're like, yeah, that's what we do.
That is definitely a fun part of it. Yeah,
absolutely. I guess the next question we've kind of been kind of inching towards it is just really around the product, right? So we kind of started to talk a little bit about the engineering components and how you get to kind of wrap everything that you're really passionate about into this one box, right? And I'm curious, what was the iteration and journey of the first iteration of the product to now? What sort of evolution have you guys gone through as you continue to get in front of customers and things like that, and kind of early on feedback and so on?
Yeah, I think when the product first launched, it was just sensing and heating. And the insight there was, okay, you want information about sleep. This is very early on when I think Fitbit existed, but the sleep tracking space wasn't nearly what it looks like today. And so there was insights there in terms of can we get sleep tracking and insights for people? And then heating, because temperature control seemed important, but heating was the easier thing to tackle, right? Cooling, especially the kinds that we do today, is very challenging. So it's okay, start with something MVP. And so that was launched. And there was, I think, a lot of excitement. This is before my time, so I'm mostly going off of the stuff that I've heard from Matteo and other co-founders here. But there was definitely interest, and so we did an Indiegogo campaign. It sold out, and there was a good learning there. But really, one thing that people just kept asking for was cooling.
Yes.
Right. It's okay, the heating side is cool, but can you build a product that cools? Because if you're too hot, you could take off your blanket, but then that's kind of it, right? Maybe you do AC, but heating is an easier problem, a lot more solutions with electric blankets and just more blankets and whatnot. And so then we did a raise and built the team to actually go tackle cooling. And that was really the first pod. And that's really where the sales started to take off, right? It's that was a pretty differentiated product. And I think still for a lot of people, they underestimate the benefit that actually controlling temperature, both cooling and heating, can have. But I think especially early on for folks who always chronically are hot, it's if you're just, myself, my partner, she's usually in sweats with the comforter on. I'm usually just in a t-shirt with the sheet on and still sweating, right? So for anyone who really struggles with temperature, I think it's just it became a real game changer, and I started seeing a lot of success there. And then over the years, we've continued to improve on it. I think whenever you work on a product, you always see all the things that can be better about it. So
all the scratches in the car that you just cleaned are out in the parking lot, but only you can see them. This is what engineers do every day. Is this thing has got great reviews and everyone loves it, and you're but the inside looks horrible. That thing looked terrible, and
it's every time we launch something, we're if we could actually just you have the next architecture in your mind. It's if we could just redesign everything again, we could solve all these problems. And so we've continued to improve on it, and continue to push that. Some of the things that we definitely found in terms of noise is a factor. So you want it to be quiet. So we've continued to make the product quieter. Comfort. The initial product was pretty comfortable, but we've continued to push that to where I think we have that. Really, the goal is to make your bed feel like your bed. Actually, for those people that don't know, it's the product goes on top of. It's like a cover that goes over your mattress, and so it's. What you don't want to do is change the underlying feeling of the mattress for a user, right? People pick their mattresses for a reason. And so we spent a lot of effort on that, continue to make thermal performance better, so you can get quicker heating and cooling. So all these things we just continue to improve.
Yeah, and cooling is so hard. I know that, Sam, you mentioned heating's easy, electric blankets and more blankets. And from the engineering side, I have built products that needed to cool. Cooling is so hard. I had a kitchen appliance that had cooling in it, and it was still impossible. To get right in the right price, at the right size, the right noise, the right energy efficiency. Cooling for all of you engineers that are listening, don't be afraid of heating. That's quite easy. Heating is 100% efficient with a resistor. Cooling is not quite near that good most of the time.
Greg, can I ask you why?
It's because when you're heating things, you take electrons and you rub them together and it makes friction, and that makes heat, and that's super easy. When you want to cool something, you have to physically take the heat, package it up, and move it somewhere else. It's like taking the trash out. And you have to shuttle that heat through something that's not a wire. You can't transfer heat through a cable, right? Electrons can't move heat. You have to move it through a medium. Sam, you guys use fluid, I think, of some kind.
We use water, exactly.
Yep. And you have to make sure the fluid flows the right way and touch the heat sink in the right way. And then you have to, once you do that, you still have to throw the heat overboard. So, Sam, where do you guys throw your heat into the air? Are you an air-to-air exchange?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yep. So you're throwing the heat to the air, which means you have to have a fan, which may be loud and horrible, and heat the room up. And I've had to heat a kitchen up and a kitchen appliance, and that was also bad. And it's this stack-on effect of product problems that are fun engineering problems. Like Sam, you and I probably love this space because it's challenging, but the electronics team has to have enough power for you to play with. The mechanical engineers have to make the fluid not leak. They have to make the heat sink big enough. The airflow has to be good. And then the user has to put the box somewhere where there's airflow, right? If they shove it in a corner or underneath their bed, it will eventually stop working well. And so, thermals are hard.
No, totally. No, it is hard. And I mean, we came to this because, we explored other options, right? This wasn't the first design that we came up with because doing it this way is hard. But if you just go back to the physics of like what Grant is talking about, like that's why we came to the system, like even using water. That's like you could use air and it's much easier. But if you just think of the amount of airflow you need to move a specific amount of heat, and then you think of like how much airflow that is, the noise that would be generated with that kind of airflow, like you kind of come back to water as just such a better medium for doing heat exchange. So this is what we came to. But as Grant said, there's a huge knock-on effects of what happens if you decide to do that. And it's like this is the kind of concept too, where I think in a consulting, if I was at my consulting company and somebody proposed this, would be like, that seems like that's going to have a lot of problems. Like I would really recommend you try to figure out a different way first of approaching this before you go that direction.
Well, and it's one of those things though, but it's all about the user experience, and sometimes the user experience demands that the engineers must suffer, right? I think that's the thing is in the challenge of the challenge of bringing a great product to market is almost always in the first 5%. Have we determined what the product should be, why is it important, and why do users want it, and then defined a good enough path to get there with engineering, right? If you have enough conviction in what the product has to hold to be true, the engineers will find a way. I mean, you guys chose a few very difficult engineering paths to make your product happen, Sam, but you did that because it made it a wonderful product experience. And I think that's the hallmark of really good hardware companies is having conviction about what it should do, and then letting the engineers have enough freedom to explore to make that delivery happen.
What you said about a lot of the work is in that early part. I think that's true in terms of the product definition. Like if you get the product definition right, then there's no amount of implementation that's
right. There's no engineering that can undo that problem.
That of a product that just somebody doesn't want. But it's funny because it's just the execution. There's just so much that you have to get right, and especially if you're trying to build products at scale that meet the bar that we have. It's like just the long tail of work that you have to do. Anyone who's been in the space knows, right? That's what makes hardware difficult.
Well, you mean you can't do a software update to stop the leak or get it colder or clean the filter?
Oh man, I wish.
And I think that's actually like a really good topic is how hardware companies are held to such a high bar, because when we ship, it has to work every time or mostly every time, right? Like there is no ship it and then improve it over time, and that is the difference in tact of a hardware product versus a pure software product in their development cycle, in how they think about development and testing. I mean, you guys probably have some amazing verification and validation tests written now on your next generation products because you've touched the stove and gotten burned along the way.
Oh yeah. Oh, exactly. Like we have huge batteries of tests and automated test systems that we've built out to be able to qualify new designs. That's a huge part of what we do. Yeah. And actually, to your point of why the hardware's hard, like I think the other thing that makes it particularly tough for startups, especially if you're doing early products, is the bar you have is to compare your Gen 1 product to the mature 20-year rev of a hardware product that's now gone down the full experience curve, right, and been fully optimized. Like whenever I look at things like a fridge or even cars like gas combustion cars, it's like insane the amount of engineering that's gone into that, right? And it's like, but it's because those products have been around for like 100 years, and so they've been so fully optimized. But the average person is not going to think about that. They're going to look at your product and have the same bar. It's like, well, my iPhone can do this. I bought a $200 microwave that can do this. Why can't your product?
Why can't your very expensive, very niche new thing meet this level that I have for all the other guys?
Well, no, exactly.
And I think this hilarious moment of what you brought up, like appliances. This is one of my favorite things. Because we've gotten better at engineering them, appliances have gotten significantly worse. Because engineers can now measure exactly how long it's going to take to fail. We engineer to the limit of the warranty. We no longer have to have twice as thick of a casting or a bigger piece or a bigger motor, because we didn't know. You had to overbuild it back in the day to make sure it lasts more than the warranty period, which is why your grandmother's refrigerator from the 70s and 80s is cranking away. And the new Samsung you bought 7 years ago, like, fails tomorrow. And it's this crazy dichotomy of, like, the better we've gotten at engineering, the closer to the sun we can fly in engineering, like, design to bring costs down. It's great. We've actually, go look at TVs today. You can buy a TV basically for free compared to what they used to cost. And it's because we've gotten so good at building TVs. But on the flip side, we've also gotten so good at cost optimizing the motor in your washing machine, the pump in your, in your refrigerator, and they don't last as long because we didn't need to build as much, margin in. So I think it's this crazy dichotomy in the space. I mean, Sam, have you seen that over the years in the consulting space where because the tools were bad, we had to guess and overshoot things, and now with simulation and design history, we can really tighten all that up.
Actually, it's funny. I joke with my friends because so I went to business school and I worked in management consulting, and I do think there's this management consultification of just the world. I think that happened. That it speaks to what you're talking about, right? Like, you're talking about it from an engineer perspective, but it's just like, it's everything, right? It's like surge pricing, revenue optimization, and it all makes sense in terms of its specific, like,
its function for the business.
What they're trying to, function for the business, or what they're trying to optimize. And, you can argue that, delivers better value for folks because of price differentiation, all that kind of stuff. But there does come a point where you're like, the craftsmanship and, like, really, like, the kind of connection and relationship that people have to companies and businesses, like, that definitely, like, has suffered as things become more spreadsheeted, right? Like, and everything is getting fully cost optimized.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's think about the doorman in front of the hotel is like the prime example of that, right? You had the concierge, you'd pull up to the hotel, he'd come out, he'd grab your bags, you showed up, you get this warm feeling, you feel like it was nice, safe, and secure, an elevated experience. Management consulting comes in the room and says, hey, if we remove the doorman, we can insert this much money. We put revolving doors, and now no one comes back to the hotel because Bob's no longer there to welcome you with warm arms into your shop. So I think it's another example of, like, kind of that exact situation where sometimes over optimizing just for, like, the business case versus what it sounds like for you guys. You guys actually went down a harder engineering path because you built it with the customer in mind from the beginning, and we're willing to bear all of that brunt in the effort to get to that point, right?
Yeah. No, I think for sure. And don't get me wrong. Like, we want to make prudent financial decisions as a company. Like, that's how you operate. That's how you get like, have a company at all. And so we definitely do care about that, and we're disciplined. But at the same time, we're a group of people, and especially with the kind of products we build, like, we use the product. Like, we care deeply about these products. Like, everyone on our team, like, we're constantly thinking about how to make it better, or, like, we're using it at home and we're like, oh man, this part of the thing is not good. Let's, like, definitely fix this. And so for us, it's also wanting to really build great products, right? At the end of the day, it doesn't come down to just the dollars and cents. It's like, we want to build something that people love, that it's like we're trying to create a category and, like, really put something out there that will resonate with people and that people will really, find awesome, right? That's, like, what we're trying to do. It's not just trying to make a successful company. It's like, we want to make amazing products that people love.
Well, and I can double click that your team is obsessed with what you're building, because when I met them all in person, there was nothing else they would ever talk about. They are fully obsessed. I don't know what you're doing in the culture, what you're putting in the coffee over there, but it's working really, really well.
Yeah.
But I think you brought up an awesome topic of balance between, like, shareholder value, pun intended, and, like, making it right for the customer and engineering perfection or optimization or all these things. Hyper fixating on any one of those outcomes is bad. You will drop the ball on the other two. And it's the role of a good executive team and a good product leader team to fight each other in the boardroom, in the conference room, over these choices until you find the right balance. Because I think that what you guys have struck in the business is you were very uncompromising on what you were going to do for the customer. We're going to make health better. We're going to control these things and measure this stuff. And at some point you had to ship a product. So I'm sure there are things inside the product that the product team is cringing on, right? The engineer is like, oh, I wish I had more time to fix this.
Of course.
But it's ship or die. Yeah. And you ship, make enough revenue to hire more engineers, get better test equipment to make the Gen 2 better than the Gen 1. And this goes on for infinity. The first iPhone had no app store, guys. The first iPhone sucked. And watch where we are today. And it's building enough shareholder value or corporate revenue to grow the team and the tools and the culture to continue that V2 makes even better, V3 is better, and maybe V4 and 5 is actively saving lives at scale because people are getting more sleep. They're having less stress in their life. And I think this is this balance of mission most people forget about in hardware, that you actually have to make enough choices to live long enough to have the impact you'd like to have.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's well said. I think that's well said. With products, I always think about it from 3 dimensions, which is there's 3 things you have to solve. And if you get any one of those wrong, your product fails, your company fails. And so first is desirability. Like people have to want your product. If you don't have that, you have no company. The second is viability. So you have to have a business case and fundamentals around the company that actually make the company survive. Because you could have a great product, company fails, there's no more product in the world, right? And then there's the technical viability, right? It's like you can have a great idea, but you actually need to be able to deliver it. So it's really the triangulation of those 3 things that you have to get right. But you lose any of those, and then that's where companies I feel like lose their way.
I'm stealing that. That is going right in the dictionary.
Well, one of the other things that Sam mentioned when we first got together and we were talking about doing the podcast together was this idea of latent demand, right? And that it was kind of clear early on, or something that you kind of matched to. I have another question. I'll just put the 2 together, kind of like the art of the MVP of not undershooting or overshooting, but also identifying those 3 kind of stools. And one of those you kind of mentioned on the first one, which is kind of just like latent demand. Like, do people actually want this thing? Could you kind of pick that apart a bit? Kind of those three stools, maybe the first one being around latent demand and kind of understanding what you mean by that and what people should be looking for before they invest 18 months into trying to grow and build something?
I think the thing that I've consistently seen throughout my experience, and I saw this with my startup, I saw it in consulting, is when you have products that are going to succeed, you will see the signal from users somewhere. Like there will be people you run across that are like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like I want this. It's like the take my money thing, right? It's like, and you should see that signal. Like if you see lukewarm signal, which is 90% of the time what you're going to find is you talk to people and they're like, oh, that's a cool idea. And they're interested and they want to test it and they want to beta it. Because, likely if you're a smart person and you've done research, you're not going to pick a concept that makes no sense, right? So you're going to get people to resonate with you. But the key is how do you get to beyond that, to where people are like, oh my God, that is amazing. Like, I need that. Here's my money. Take my money. If you can deliver that, like, I will buy it. And I think that kind of signal needs to be there. If you don't have that, it becomes such a push. And the times where it's possible that you don't see that is because you're not talking to the right people, right? It is possible that you've got the audience wrong. And so maybe your product is really good, but you just haven't talked to the right people who have the right acute need. So that would be the one case where, especially with startups, like when you hear of startups pivoting, it could be that you're trying to pivot your product to different markets, right? And so you need to keep hunting, but you will see that signal. And so if that signal's not there, I think that's a really bad sign. And this is something we've seen I've seen in consulting, and even at 8slip now, like, we run lots of different kinds of trials where we have different product concepts. And so we'll create MVPs, we'll create prototypes. I'm sure you guys are doing this all the time for clients. Mm-hmm. And we show those to different people. And in consumer, we have the benefit that, a lot of times, like, we are the target demographic as well. And so we can do an initial gauge and say, like, am I excited for this? But, even internally, we see product concepts where this happened last year. We had one product concept where on paper, we thought it would be awesome. It made a ton of sense. And the science backed it, just like when you brainstorm with people, this product concept seemed great. So we actually built a prototype, started testing with it. It was getting fairly lukewarm responses. Like we asked questions about, how disappointed would you be if you couldn't have this? It's a question that Superhuman uses, as well as like, how would you rate this product on a scale of 1 to 5? Like all these, and it was doing okay, but nothing was jumping off the page. There was another product concept we were testing. Sorry, I can't get into all the details because these are things.
That's okay.
No worries.
But you'll tell me later, right? After we're done recording.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we didn't, it was kind of an idea that we thought was interesting, but we weren't going like all in on it. And it started, there were groups of users that didn't want to return the prototype.
I was just gonna you nail it when they're not mailing the beta back. You're like, no, I literally only have 2 of those. I need to do this for the next study next week. Like, this is mine now.
Yeah, exactly. No, and when we launched a thermoregulating blanket last year, and that's actually how that started as well. Like we had tried some other ones that were on the market, and we were like, this is didn't seem that great. Mm-hmm. But then one of our engineers actually created a prototype that he thought could be interesting, and so then he made it. I went and slept on it, and I was like, this is actually pretty good. And then we started sharing with some other people, and the aha moment for me was one of our engineers partners basically asked for it back.
Right.
And I was like, okay, this is signal. Like that person, she just wants a good product, right? She's not working on this, not part of the development team. And the fact that she's asking for it back after a test, like that was like, okay, we're on something with this. Yeah.
No, that's always incredible. And I want to share the story of the opposite of this that is so terrifying. When you have an amazing CEO founder that is the world's best salesperson, they cannot be the one that does these tests. You can get so much up into the right signal if the CEO is the one showing potential clients this, letting them take the survey, and they will woo users into wanting to buy this product. But you can't scale that CEO. Yeah. That actually isn't demand. That CEO could sell anything to anybody, and it's so important to do your market research right. We did a podcast with Smari, they're a market research firm here, and hearing how they have to put the language and the questions right to remove bias when you're trying to actually figure out, is this the feature that makes the people want the product or not, is such a science that I wish I understood. I'm glad there's people out there like Smari, so I don't have to know how to do this.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, ultimately, it's getting people to pay for your product. That's like the biggest signal. There's one thing that I've always thought about, and we actually debate here, which is like, when Kickstarter came along, I thought that was such a brilliant, just concept and platform to be able to test these concepts and get them out to market. It's like, I would love to be able to just do every product and try to do a Kickstarter campaign or something around it, just to get people to actually buy. It's such a good signal.
It's I met a startup the other week that is doing some automations that basically you give it your product and it AIifies it so it doesn't quite look just like yours, but it does the same feature set and things, and it builds websites and it buys Google ads for you for these websites it builds.
Oh, that's cool.
And it pivots features on and off and gets market signal about what you should be building. And I'm like, if this works, this is magic. I'm very hopeful to see this thing come to market.
No, yeah, that's super cool. Yeah.
The last point on this on my side, guys, is absolutely. I mean, the Y Combinator quote from Mike Seibel that I always like to tell founders when I have conversations with them is, imagine someone's hair is on fire and you handed them a brick. They would be hitting their head with the brick to put out the fire on their head because their hair is literally on fire. Like, it doesn't matter what you handed them because their hair is on fire. They want to solve this problem more than they want to solve anything else ever. That's kind of the visceral reaction you probably want to see when you're having a conversation of like, here, take my money. Like, I don't care what it is, because kind of going to your idea, and I'd love to dive into it a bit, Sam, on either overshooting or undershooting an MVP, assuming you haven't completely undershot it, even if your product is like a brick, but it's like,
it solves the problem.
It could eventually be, a fire extinguisher, whatever it would need to be. It at least solves the problem, the core issue the person had, right? Their hair is on fire. So I guess it kind of leads me into my next question for you. How do you either not overshoot or undershoot an MVP? Like, what is the art of the MVP from your perspective?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I find with engineers, we probably usually overshoot because it's very common. And from a founder perspective, I think it's very common to overshoot. And basically just the thing around undershooting, overshooting. So with an MVP, if you undershoot and you just make it so that like the features are too bare bones, or the product, the prototype is just so bad that you can't actually evaluate the proper experience, then you're going to get really bad feedback and people are not going to want it. Right. The overshooting is you're spending a lot of time polishing a prototype or a concept. It's probably, and you could have probably done less. And in fact, like you might have gotten the product concept wrong, and yet you're building all these bells and features around it. And then as a result, you're taking too long. And if you're a startup, you run out of funding, or you're taking too much time. And so then some other competitor comes along and basically has built a better version for you. So you want to get that right. I find usually with engineers, and this was certainly the case when I was doing my own startup too, it's like overshooting was the more common failure mode, especially for people who can create products and create the thing yourself. Like, you can always add more things. It's just like back to what we were talking about before. It's like every time we're launching a product, it's like, there's like 15 things I wish I could fix about this. And you end up having the exact same thing when you're launching a prototype, and you can kind of rationalize like, the reason people are not resonating with it is because there's this feature that's missing. And like, if I just add that, or, it's because the website has a little too much latency, and that's why like people don't want this. And if I could just fix that latency, then like it'll be better. And it becomes very easy to do that. Whereas if the product concept ultimately does resonate, it's exactly what you said about like the brick with the fire. It's like that thing doesn't have to be perfect. Like if there's latent demand, like
They'll let you know.
Ugly, yeah, it will be there, and then they will work with the bugs and then ask you to like fix the bugs, and then you can go through and like you got to iterate from there. And so, especially if the folks listening are the engineering types or people who create, like I do think the bias is to overshoot. So undershooting and really get that thing out there, right, and see what the signal is. Like use a picture, right, and instead of building a physical prototype. If you have there's so many things you could do to get signal initially on whether or not something is resonating, and I think that's the right way to do it. Yeah.
Oh, I could not agree more. This is a crawl, walk, run like statement I say all the time, but in this case, test your idea with AI generated images and ads somewhere.
Yeah, totally.
Then go to make a 3D print and paint it and pretend that it works and take better photos and run ads. And then do what we call the Wizard of Oz test. This is my favorite thing to do for clients. Is we go, let's say this is something that's got a touchscreen on it. We will literally buy a dev kit, put it inside of the housing, and then run cables through the table to a computer throwing images to that screen that is not running on the right hardware. We are making up the temperature measurements or the force measurements to put on the screen. It's all simulated. And there's some engineers sweating in the conference room, typing stuff into the app to get it shown.
That is 100%. That is 100% the right way to do things. I think like DoorDash, they talk about this, where initially when you ordered, I think it was email, and then somebody just read the email and drove to the restaurant.
They literally did that.
And then it was Google Sheets.
Exactly.
I still love the middle, the what is the pitch? The do things that don't scale. The first one was literally emails or text messages, and then they had some girl that was in a dorm room somewhere running a live Google Sheet, and all the drivers had their laptops open in the passenger seat of the car, getting orders on a hotspot from their iPhone, which is the funniest thing.
So one thing actually that I found interesting here is, this is certainly the case for me, and I think probably for a lot of people who create, is you have pride in terms of craftsmanship with the thing you create. And so for a lot of us, it becomes very hard to put something out there that feels unpolished. It feels wrong because so much of your identity and your just pride, really, I think, is wrapped up in the thing you create. I think this is where having a co-founder who's non-technical, who can push and be the yin to that yang, is super helpful. I did not have that in my startup, and I think that was I remember just thinking at the end, that was one of my big takeaways. And I think one of the really strengths that we have at 8 Sleep is we have folks who can really balance that kind of perspective, and especially our CEO, he really cares from a product perspective, from a user perspective, and as less skin in the game from a technical perspective, right? And so it's that. I think that is super helpful. And oftentimes it requires someone else doing it, because it is really hard to do that yourself when you're the person creating the prototype.
Absolutely. I mean, the advice that I would give to folks also listening to kind of add what Sam is saying is, leave your ego at the door.
Sorry. You know what? I think I just lost audio.
Oh, we hear you.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
Oh, you can hear me? I cannot hear you.
Let's see. Our mics are working. So I can see that our mics are working.
Sorry.
That's all right. We'll be able to clip it all together. Let's see here. He's on headphones.
Yep. Sam's, I'd imagine those are his headphones.
Yep.
Sam's Pixel Buds.
Yep.
We got your Pixel. We can see your Pixel Buds.
I can't hear you guys. Sorry.
It's okay.
That's okay.
So I fell right at that here.
We almost made it. So good.
It's all good. It'll be an easy edit.
My phone rang just now, and somehow it kicked my
Pixel Buds out.
Earbuds off. Oh wait, let me
test.
Okay, I'm back.
Yeah.
Okay.
All
Right,
good.
cool.
All
right.
good.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
That's what Sam is for in post processing on our side. Our one of our team members that edits this is Sam Wilson. He'll clip that right out.
And so we were on the topic of.
Oh no, Sam was just wrapping up that their CEO is so passionate about the user and the product that you can't grade yourself.
Not where we were. So
exactly.
Yeah, it's kind of picking back up from what Sam and Grant were saying there. I think that especially if you're a founder listening to this, or even an engineer looking to get something out the door, you really have to leave your ego at the door, because to your point, Sam, so much of a product that you make, to put it out into the world feels weird. Would you go to a job interview dressed very poorly? That's the same kind of neural pathway you're using when you're deciding whether or not to put a product out there. I wouldn't walk outside looking not as good as I could for no reason. I want this thing to look very, very good. But especially I think some of the business minds that are in startups kind of can put the ego aside and say, hey, we just need to get it out there. and then we'll iterate from there. But I completely agree with your perspective there, Sam.
No, and I love the that notion that you need someone else to tell you when it's ready, because you'll never stop, right? You'll never stop polishing your craft, making this thing better. And when someone says it's good enough, you need to take them at their word, because the worst thing that could happen is you find out that the market says, it's not good enough, and then you get to go fix it, but you know exactly how to fix it now, right?
Yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
that ego thing that when engineers finally get to the point where their ego's fully in the trash can outside behind the door and no longer in their body, they become phenomenally good at doing product, because they're chasing the user's happiness, not their pride.
Yeah, no, well said.
Sam, to make sure we account for your time, because I know we had an hour here. The question I always love to ask at the end is just, you've given so much incredible advice for folks that are listening on both your journey, 8 sleep, how to do it right, how to do it wrong, et cetera, or what not to do wrong, I should say. And I'm curious, just like general advice you would have given to yourself if you were to go back and talk to a previous, earlier version of you. Right. What would you have said to yourself maybe 3 or 4 years ago that you've learned today, or younger you?
Yeah. It's funny because the thing I would tell myself, I actually think people did tell me at the time. I didn't listen. And now it's much more ingrained in my bones. Now, I think the biggest thing, one is the thing we talked about of, if the world wants your product, like, you will see the signal. Mm-hmm. And so really keep hunting. Like, don't just keep polishing what you have, but keep hunting, because either you need to pivot the product or you need to find the right audience, right? Mm-hmm. And you just haven't found the right audience yet. And so that's a huge one. And I would definitely that lesson is seared in my brain. The other is around this partner. I know everyone talks about this, where really the best companies and the best teams, it's because you have complementary skills. And trying to do it as a solo founder was really hard for me. And there are people who do it. I mean, I have tremendous respect for people who are able to embody all those things into one brain, because it was for sure difficult. And especially if you're a technical person, and I felt this, and especially towards the end, I felt this acutely. It was, if I had somebody who was more from the marketing perspective, where really they were willing to try and just do experiments and just get stuff out there and help balance that for me, like that, like those two things have really stand out the most. There was a third thing, which, I mean, this is not, it's tough, and I don't know if I even have a fully resolved perspective on this, but when I started my company, I had 2 small kids, and there was kind of a ticking clock in my mind. It's like I gave myself kind of a timeline to do something. And I think deadlines are good, but I also think with startups, like, if you have just too short a time to pursue it, like, that's tough, because startups they take forever. I mean, just like what we talked about at the beginning of this, like, these ideas and companies take so much longer than you would think. And there's so many issues that are going to come along the way that just having, like, in my mind, it was like a 2-year window. It's like, that's just way too short. Like, that's just not that. Like, I think I would have tried to get myself to the place where it's like I could kind of pursue it more without feeling that kind of limitation.
Yep. No, the 10-year overnight success, right? It's the funniest story how those always happen. And again, for everyone listening, I have a co-founder, Drew Westrick, that has been with me ride or die through. We joined a startup that failed, and then we consulted for a bit, and before we started a Glassboard, and then started Glassboard, and have been through a few startups earlier together. And I couldn't have done it alone. Like, my personality type is so strong in one direction. I need his balance to bring me into center. And every other works here, you'll see us bickering in the hallways like a married couple, and it is like the ultimate cheat code. Because the more we fight about something, the more we end up with the correct answer instead of whichever answer one of our egos wanted to pick. So everyone listening, like, do just try and find the yin to your yang, the balance to the force, the light and the dark. Like, that is such a superpower in the early stage stuff. And it's really cool that you don't have to cry alone when things are hard. So it's, added benefit.
Always nice.
No, but Sam, this has been so much fun. It has been really cool to have someone on the podcast that is deeply technical, but is also ridden through the fire and flames of, doing the founder game, launching a company, and doing that. So really appreciate all of the perspective you've had today, man.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, no, thank you guys. I mean, thanks for creating this kind of content, and thanks for having me on. Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Absolutely, Sam. Everybody, this is the Hardtech Podcast. We will see you guys next week.